Hey, gorgeous people. Happy Monday morning, September 1st. Saturn is back into Pisces this week, just in time for eclipse season. Mercury moves into Virgo, squaring Uranus and Gemini. So much going on. As always, we are going to get into all of that. I'm your fearless host, Alexandra Blair of Nine Lives Astrology. Every week here on First Light, we talk about art and archetypes and stories and mythologies and random ass little pop culture references to bring astrology into the bones, into something we can live in and breathe in and talk about rather than letting it rot away in the dusty old textbooks behind my head. We're going to get into all of those transits and more. But first, before we get to comments, I just wanted to share with you guys that this week is officially my 6-month anniversary on YouTube. When I started this series back in March, you may remember I didn't even have a name. I just had an idea and a prayer, and I just started hitting the ground running. I cannot believe the amount of support and excitement and enthusiasm and all of the real fun experimentational stuff we've been doing here for 6 months. I try really hard not to try too hard and to bring astrology into a real grounded and lived in place. That's always my goal, giving us access points to what the hell this woo woo language really is trying to tell us. And I just appreciate you guys being along for the ride. And I have to take this moment to give credit where credit is due to my incredible video editor, Liz, who takes my slobbering, stuttering, drooling videos every week and turns me into a bona fide YouTuber. I would be nothing without Liz, and you guys wouldn't be here every week either. So wherever you are, join me in blowing Liz a little kiss through the ether. And 6 months is as good a time as any to remind you that my email inbox and my DMs are always open. If you want to send me synchronicities that you're getting from the show, which I love to receive, if you want to send me feedback, if you want to send me requests, if you want to send me presents, you can send me an email or a DM. I'm always so happy to hear from you guys. Tea with Lilith says, Leo rising, Cancer, Venus, and Moon. Just got a record deal. Virgo sun and feeling critical energy next level, like I'm always having to let off the critique. Scared of expressing my art in Salt Lake City, where the culture is so repressed, but I believe music is the medicine we need. Thank you for always inspiring connection to the stars. Well, congratulations, my Virgo sun friend, on your record deal. That's huge news. And so much love to my audience, which is just, you guys are the best, but people commenting under Tea with Lilith's comment and congratulating them on their record deal. That's incredible. I love you guys so much. And congratulations. I hope you're able to spend a little bit of that sacred messiness of this Virgo period, or maybe bring in some of that stuff that Virgo doesn't always get under this permissive umbrella of the record deal. I can totally relate to living in somewhere where the culture is at least slightly repressed. I live in Texas, and honestly, people surprise me with their acceptance and their openness on a daily basis. Granted, I do have green hair and I'm covered in tattoos, so I think people really know what they're getting into when they meet me on the street in Texas. But I do love hearing from fellow Texans or people who are not exactly the demographic you would expect from where I live. I know Salt Lake City actually has a lot of subculture. There are some cool bands that I love from Salt Lake City and a really lovely little mystical shop called Cat and Cauldron. If any of you guys are ever in Salt Lake City, definitely go check that out. Okay, congratulations again to you with Lilith. Careful Hyacinth says Pluto as the Greek chorus will live rent free in my head forever. And let me tell you, Pluto as the Greek chorus has been living in my head rent free since birth as well. I have Pluto conjunct my MC in the 11th house. It transited my 12th house. It transited my first house. And now it's transiting my second house, bound for my chart ruler. That Greek chorus, masked, dark, spooky, real Macbeth like, has been in my brain since birth and probably will be till death. So I'm glad that that resonated with you guys. I got a few comments about that and people talking about how much that imagery resonated with them. It feels truer than ever in Aquarius, which is such a collectively oriented place. All right, let's get into these transits. Don't forget, if you're looking for more personalized support through eclipse season, I am always available for one-on-one bookings. I'm currently booking for the end of September, the beginning of October. My calendar is going to be really limited as I run the mentorship program that I'm running with Sarah Posh. We are doing really intensive small group chart work. We actually still have a couple spots available. Again, not in the false scarcity way. We are keeping this group intentionally pretty small. So if you want to study with me or book a one-on-one session to process some of what's happening, especially during this really potent and grieving eclipse season, those links are in the description. Here are our transits for the week. On September 1st, today, Saturn will leave Aries. It is retrograding back into Pisces. We also tomorrow have Mercury entering the sign of its exaltation and its domicile, Virgo. When Mercury enters Virgo, it will immediately square up with Uranus in Mercury ruled Gemini. On the 4th, we have Mars in Libra receiving a square from exalted Jupiter in Cancer. We also have Uranus stationing retrograde this week at 1 degrees of Gemini. It will go back into Taurus. And then rounding out the week, we have a lunar eclipse, a full moon at 15 degrees of Pisces. Kind of a big week, and we've been waiting for this all year. I want to kick things off by paying Saturn all of the lip service that it deserves because Saturn this week is moving back into Pisces for the last time. So Saturn will come in today, September 1st, and will stay in Pisces until February 14th when it comes back into Aries, and pretty immediately after that, will make that historic conjunction with Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries. Hear me when I say this is such an important moment to actually handle whatever last little bit of bullshit material Saturn has been trying patiently or impatiently to get us to handle while Saturn has spent all of its time in Pisces. Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. Saturn is always trying to teach us some kind of lesson. Now, if you've been receiving a wall of no, no, no since March of 2023, there's almost certainly some Saturnian work that you are denying. I find Saturn transits to be honestly pretty enjoyable unless there is work that we are avoiding. And that's typically when we're getting hit with those Saturnian restrictions, roadblocks, friction, doors being slammed in our face. So if you're looking at the Pisces area of your chart and you're feeling like you're still hitting a no somewhere, it's actually time. It is actually finally time to handle that before Saturn moves into its next phase in your chart. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Saturn's phases or Saturn in Aries or what it's doing, my darling friend and often collaborator Sarah Posh and I also did a webinar about Saturn in Aries, which is linked in the description. And we talk in detail about where you're at in the Saturn cycle and what it means for you. So, are you in that opening Saturn square? Are you in the Saturn opposition phase? Are you in the closing Saturn square phase? Maybe you're about to enter your Saturn return. Or if you have Saturn in Pisces, maybe you're closing out your Saturn return. Either way, there's some really important lessons that Saturn archetypally often insists upon at each point in that cycle. I'm going to give you guys an example from my life. So, Pisces rules my 3rd house, which, among many other things in my life, siblings, daily religious ritual, my ability to travel locally, it rules my relationship with writing. I've been a writer my entire life. It is how I handle and process anything. And I've been published in a few professional contexts and used to work in the music industry and do a lot of writing there, but I've never really published a book or a personal essay or anything like that. Now, while Saturn has been in Pisces, I have written more than I have written in my entire life. But my relationship to writing has really always felt like an abusive relationship. It hurts me to write. I have to pull and get things out of me. And what I've realized with Saturn and Pisces, squaring my sun in Gemini, which thank God that's over, is just in my own sense of expectations about what it means to be a writer and what kind of writing is legitimate writing has really been limiting me almost my entire life. It's only been in the last couple of years that I have really realized to myself, like, hey, you don't have to publish anything in your entire lifetime to call yourself a writer. You don't need to write 1,000 words a day to call yourself a writer. You don't need to be Stephen King to call yourself a writer. I honestly, before this transit, would never have called myself a writer and never would have identified myself that way, even though I write thousands and thousands of words each week, just personal reflections, nonfiction, all kinds of stuff. But for me, what I've realized is that I really do need some kind of Saturnian boundary around my writing. Now, I have tried and failed every year of my life to make a regimen of 1,000 words a day or a certain time each day when I write. That's just not how my brain works. But I can tell that Saturn coming back into Pisces wants to formalize my relationship to writing in some way. So, what I'm actually doing, I'm currently working on a project for myself that has a lot to do with my postpartum experience. So, it has to do with the texture and the quality of my brain and what happened to my brain postpartum. It has to do with rage. It has a lot to do with sexuality. It has to do with the organic feelings and smells and sights and sounds that happened in the postpartum experience. And it's just a really complicated little project that doesn't have any kind of narrative structure that I can make sense of at this time. But what I've done is I've actually plotted out times from now through December that I'm going to ritually work on this writing. It is dark, it is deep, it is intense. So for me, I'm going to be using time periods when the moon is in Scorpio, conjoining my Pluto MC conjunction up there. And those are times where I'm going to be ritually reaching in to those really deep, dark, scary places that I want to bring into this project. I'm never going to be the kind of person who can sit down at the same time every day and write 1,000 words. It's just not who I am. I'm too cyclical. I'm too rhythmic. I'm too ping pong brain. But this feels like a really exciting and grounded third house way to approach my writing. Let me know in the comments what you think Saturn is doing for you during its last dance in Pisces. What house does Pisces rule for you? If you need help figuring that out, you can let me know your rising sign and I can tell you. Tomorrow, Mercury enters Virgo and immediately forms up a square to Uranus and Mercury ruled Gemini. Now, the square technically happens on Wednesday, but this is an electric discharge of material that is going to be very relevant for this Virgo eclipse that is forthcoming. We talked a little bit around the Virgo new moon about a double red underline happening in your life, some typo, some error, some area of focus that Mercury and Uranus together are really encouraging you to look at. And it gets strong here because Mercury has moved into its exaltation and domicile. Now, on the Nightlight Astrology Weekend Wisdom series, which I'll link in the description, Whitney and Alex and I talked about how Mercury in Virgo is a great example of a strong planet not necessarily bringing only good things into our lives. Like Mercury in Virgo is very opinionated, it's very specific, it's kind of eccentric in some ways as well. In that episode, we actually equated Mercury as like an eccentric hotel owner of the Hotel Virgo who like lives in the hotel and also owns the hotel and knows all of the guests and knows everything that they like and has these weird little quirks that Virgos are known to have. And this moment really feels like the beginning of what is sliding into place as we head into eclipse season for Virgo. And as we talked about in the Virgo new moon video, that Virgo eclipse is not necessarily a kind, hand-holding kind of eclipse. It really has a grief to it. It really has a release to it. And I think this is where it's going to begin to settle in. It's almost like if there's any part of your body that is thrashing against those lessons, we're being pinned a little bit into place here by some bolts of lightning from Uranus. And I would recommend, again, using this Uranian energy. If you didn't start with the new moon, it's not too late to start. You can use this Uranian energy to really inspire and electrocute your brain and think and behave and act in ways that have not been conventional to you. But this is a really, really dense mercurial space that we're in here. Another way this week might feel to you is like getting the ick. And by the time we get to that eclipse in Virgo, the ick has become untenable. But this week, if the ick strikes you, especially about that area of your life where you have the double red underline or where you know that you need to make changes, maybe you're emotionally not ready. Maybe the cost of change hasn't yet been dwarfed by the price of letting things stay the same. Let the ick take hold for you this week and let it carry you into eclipse season so that you are emotionally ready to discharge whatever material needs to be released in Virgo by that eclipse on September 21. This tension is being underscored in a couple other ways by what's going on this week. So Mars in detriment in Libra is receiving a square from an exalted Jupiter. And when Saturn goes back into Pisces, Saturn comes into a space of collaboration with Jupiter because it will be in a sign-based trine and Jupiter rules Pisces. So Saturn moves from this sort of like tenuous, mixed dignity reception with Mars, leaves Mars hanging in Libra, moves back to collaborate with Jupiter. And this is such a weak and diplomatic Mars, and this puts Saturn and Jupiter into really strong positions. We also have Venus in a great position. The Sun is in a good position. Mercury's in a good position. This really feels like the most productive setup to an eclipse in Pisces that we have had in this entire series. So do not be scared by Saturn in this Pisces eclipse. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first, Uranus is going to be retrograding back into Taurus for the last time before it stations direct again, and will be moving through Gemini until mid 2033. So pay attention here. It will be retrograde from September 6th, 2025, all the way till February 4th, 2026, where it will station direct at 27 degrees of Taurus. Now, it's interesting to play on the boundary between sensual, embodied, earthy, fixed Taurus and that lofty, intellectual, zinging, mercurial, electric Gemini air spirit that is mutable in nature. And I know so many people who have had events that they can pin down to the day of Uranus's ingress into Gemini. So if that's you and July 9th is ringing some bells for you, or that week had some stuff going on, we had a lot of Uranian events happening that week, July 4th, July 9th. Definitely pay attention here. All right, folks, we've reached the main event, which is this lunar eclipse. It is a full moon eclipse at 15 degrees of Pisces. Definitely let me know in the comments if you are already feeling this eclipse take hold. Even if you just comment the word eclipse, send me a little wink, let me know how it's going for you. This is by far the gentlest of all of these Pisces eclipses. Saturn has been doing its ruthless work in Pisces since March of 2023, but now it really is coming back in a way that feels like an ally. It feels kinder, it feels like a hand up rather than a door closed. This is in part because Saturn is applying to a trine with the ruler of Pisces, that's Jupiter, and Jupiter is currently exalted in Cancer. And this trine actually gets more and more powerful as we go into the end of the year and planets start moving through Scorpio and forming up a grand water trine that runs from basically mid-October through mid-December. This is very, very supportive astrology. So anything you have left for that Saturn to do, I'll say again, whatever bullshit Saturn has been trying to get you to look at in Pisces for 2.5 years, this is the time to do it. This is the most supportive time to do it. Yes, Saturn is at 29 degrees, but it doesn't really feel like a reckoning. It just feels like a critical point of action where we can actually take the steps finally with all of the wisdom and all of the experience that we have gathered with Saturn and Pisces. We often think about Saturn as the planet of like restriction and roadblocks. It is those things. But Saturn also generates an appetite in us. It's also the workout and it's also the appetite. And it feels like what's happened is that during this Pisces eclipse series, our appetite for the work of Saturn has actually grown, as well as our wisdom. It really feels like there's almost a secret doorway of opportunity that is opening here. There might be things going on behind the scenes that you can't see, events, conversations, social politics, whatever it may be. There is some kind of secret doorway here that is available to us if we are willing to look for it. Now, I want to give you guys some dates because there previously was a new moon in Pisces at this exact degree, 15 degrees of Pisces, on March 6th of 2019. That's a lunation, so I wouldn't imagine that it would be enormously powerful. But if you have placements in Pisces, you should definitely go back and look at what was going on in March of 2019 and just see if you can tie anything together with what's going on now. And here's a few more dates for you of the previous eclipse series in Pisces that occurred from March 20th, 2015 through February 16th, 2017. So these are dates you can go back and look at, particularly if you have mutable placements. That would be Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius. Take a look back at these dates and see what was going on. Now, all of the other transits were different at that time, but you might be able to see some kind of narrative storyline that emerges over the years. So, to summarize this eclipse happening here in Pisces, it's almost like we received this set of instructions from Saturn and we spent a good long time being defiant about it and questioning Saturn's authority and maybe being a little bratty about it, and frankly, being beaten down and whipped into shape like a really good military training montage. And now we're at the point where we have been broken by Saturn and Pisces. And Saturn and Pisces is like, all right, sweetie, come on, let's go get a drink and we'll really talk about what's going on. It's that kind of friendly hand being held out here that we're able to access if we want to. All right, we've reached the part of the show where we talk about how I, as a pagan, human, animist, astrologer lady, am going to be using the astrology of this week. Now, I really do not do a ton of ritual or planned actions during eclipse weeks. I just feel like eclipses are a sacred kind of mystery in astrology. I don't do too much to delineate them or try to anticipate them. I've experimented with that, but I've found that eclipses are the most sacred kind of astrological mystery to me, and I have a great sort of deference and respect for them, to be totally honest, but I don't overly catastrophize either. So, one of the most sacred ways that I actually connect with any given eclipse is to go back and look at what kind of music was coming out when that eclipse cycle last repeated itself. So I have a lot of fun looking at the previous eclipse cycle where the nodes are flipped, but also the even further back eclipse cycle where it is more of a nodal return. What I mean by that is if we go back to the last time eclipses were happening in Pisces and Virgo, the north node was in Virgo and the south node was in Pisces. But if we go back to the eclipse cycle before that one, we actually have a nodal return where the south node was in Virgo and the north node was in Pisces. Now, if none of that makes sense to you, that's okay. I'm going to give you a couple date ranges anyway, and you can think about this and follow along with me. So the last time the nodes were exactly where they are is from March 2006 through February 2008. And the last time we had eclipses in Pisces and Virgo with those flipped nodes was from March 2015 through February 2017. I actually started this process a little bit accidentally because what I found was that every time we were in an eclipse season, I was suddenly reaching for weird old music that I hadn't heard in so long. For example, I remember at the time reaching for Fall Out Boy from Under the Cork Tree and thinking, I haven't heard this album in over a decade. Like, what is actually happening? And it was totally related to those eclipses we were having in Aries and Libra. So now I always just pay attention to my brain and what it's reaching for as eclipses start coming around. I've been reaching for a lot of music from that 2005, 2006 period. Obviously, I've been into a lot of emo, screamo. I just went to see My Chemical Romance do their Black Parade tour, for example. So this album definitely came out during that time period. Actually, for not being a Virgo, James Mercer definitely has a thing with these Pisces Virgo eclipses because a lot of the Shins releases time up. So I'm going to be posting a list of what kind of albums I'm listening to that came out during this time period over on Instagram. Even if you don't follow me or don't have Instagram, you can check it out on the web platform. And definitely, if any albums come to mind from these time periods, put them in the comments so that I can relive the Pisces Virgo eclipse glory days right alongside you. All right, beautiful people, you know what that means. My coffee is over. And so the show must also be over. I am wishing you guys all a safe, a sound, a cathartic, a not patronizing, but a genuinely, endearingly handheld by Saturn Pisces eclipse moment this week. Let me know what's coming up for you. As always, I hope you guys have an incredible week, and I'll see you next Monday.